Where does Marino fit into this team?
I think he's more trusted in the big games. I do. I think he's a player that you know what you're going to get, and he's got so much more experience in these games.
Well, he's a versatile midfielder. He can play as a deep line playmaker, but we've seen him to brilliant effect as a number 8 now.
Something strange is happening at Arsenal this season. Something brilliant. Mikel Merino has quietly transformed into Arsenal's most dangerous threat inside the box. A year ago, nobody would have predicted it. But football loves rewriting reputations brutally, suddenly, and sometimes beautifully. Because in 2025, when Arsenal needed someone to step up, Marino became the man who delivered when the team was breaking. St. James's Park, 84th minute. Arsenal drowning. Newcastle roaring. The season slipping into panic. Then Marino, fresh off the bench, rose above everyone and headed Arsenal back to life. That goal didn't just win a match, it stopped a crisis. Stamford Bridge, Chelsea leading, Arsenal frustrated, 10 players behind the ball. And again, from nowhere, Marino climbed into the London sky and powered home the equalizer in the biggest derby of the month, like he was born for moments exactly like this. 3 days later, he did it again. Against Brentford, Marino scored Arsenal's opening goal, another header, another perfectly timed run, another example of a midfielder who somehow reads the penalty area better than half the strikers in the league. And the numbers? They're not whispers anymore, they're evidence. 11 goals and 2 assists this season, 9 Premier League goals in 2025, more than any Arsenal player, 6 headed goals, the most of any player in the Premier League this calendar year. This isn't luck, this isn't a purple patch, this is a player who has redefined himself right in front of our eyes. Mikel Merino arrived as a midfielder. Today, he's Arsenal's emergency striker, their most reliable finisher, their late game weapon, their problem solver, the man who scores the goals that shift momentum, calm the stadium, and keep Arsenal alive in the title race. So how did a €30 million tactical signing become Arsenal's most decisive player in 2025? And why every big moment lately seems to have one name attached to it, Mikel Merino? If you really want to understand why Mikel Merino looks so calm in chaos at the Emirates, you have to go back to a very different stadium. Not the Emirates, not the Bernabeu, El Sadar, Pamplona, a tight, noisy ground where football doesn't feel like entertainment, it feels like survival. That's where he grew up, a tall, skinny kid from Pamplona, son of Mikel Merino, a local hero who had played and coached for Osasuna. Mikel didn't walk into football with cameras and hype. He walked into it with family expectations and muddy training pitches. At Amigo and then at Osasuna's academy, he wasn't the most gifted dribbler or the flashiest talent. What stood out was something else. He understood the game, positioning, timing, when to step, when to wait, when to run into the box instead of asking for the ball at his feet. Coaches kept saying the same thing. He sees it early. By the time he made his first team debut in August 2014, starting against Barcelona B in the Segunda Division, he looked oddly comfortable for a teenager. No panic, no rush. Just a young midfielder who played like someone who'd already filed every possible situation in his head. That season, he scored his first professional goal away at Las Palmas, a late winner in a 2-1 game that Osasuna had to take something from. It wasn't a wonder strike, it was a run into the right pocket of space, a calm finish, 3 priceless points. Already the pattern was there, big moments, composed execution, no drama on his face. Osasuna's reality at that time was brutal, flirting with relegation, constantly under pressure. Marino wasn't protected in some sanitized environment. As a young midfielder, he played in matches where one mistake could drag a historic club closer to the 3rd tier. In 2015-16, he played 34 league games, scored 4 times, and helped push Osasuna into the promotion playoffs. In the semifinals, he didn't just participate, he decided them, scoring a brace in the first leg against Gymnastic and another in the second. For a lot of players, that's the dream climax. For Marino, it was just the first layer. Then came Borussia Dortmund. In 2016, he swapped Pamplona for the Yellow Wall. For many, that kind of move can swallow you whole. New country, new league, higher tempo, bigger expectations. Marino didn't become a superstar there. Let's be honest about that, but he learned. He experienced a dressing room full of elite players, absorbed the rhythms of Champions League football, and discovered what it means to fight for minutes in a squad stacked with talent. His appearances were limited, but that education mattered. Tactical detail, pressing structures, rotations, all the things you see him execute now at Arsenal, some of that was forged in training sessions in Germany, not just matches in Spain. From there, it was England calling scoring for the first time. Newcastle United. At St. James's Park, he got his first glimpse of English intensity. The noise, the chaos, the expectation of a club that feels bigger than its recent record. He didn't become a cult hero. He didn't dominate headlines, but he did something important. He experienced the Premier League's physicality and tempo early, long before he returned as a more complete, mature player. He even scored a late winner against Crystal Palace with, of course, a header. A small preview of what would later become a signature. But the real version of Mikel Merino, the one Arsenal eventually fell in love with, was built in San Sebastian. Real Sociedad gave him what every intelligent midfielder craves: responsibility. Over 6 seasons there, he played 242 games and scored 27 goals. Not numbers that scream striker, but numbers that whisper something more interesting: consistency, presence, and a growing habit of arriving in the box at just the right time. This was where he became a leader, not just a good player. This was where his body filled out, his duels improved, and his role expanded. He wasn't just recycling the ball, he was winning it more than almost anyone in Europe. In the 2023-24 season, he recorded the most duels for possession in Europe's top leagues. That stat doesn't trend on social media, but managers love it. It means this guy doesn't hide. This guy's in the middle of everything. And then, of course, there was the trophy. Copa del Rey 2020. Real Sociedad versus Athletic Club, a Basque final full of emotion and tension. Marino played the full 90 minutes, drew the penalty that decided the match, and walked off the pitch as player of the match. On paper, one title. In reality, a statement that he could carry responsibility in the biggest game of his club's modern history. At international level, Spain had seen enough. He went from youth tournaments winning the U19 Euros in 2015 and the U21 Euros in 2019 to the senior team, where he initially looked like what people expected: a neat, reliable midfielder, good passer, good engine, useful squad piece. On 20 August 2020, Mikel Merino's life changed. After years of building quietly, steadily away from the spotlight, he finally received his first call-up to the Spanish senior national team. Luis Enrique named him in the squad for Spain's opening matches of the 2020-2021 UEFA Nations League against Germany and Ukraine, the moment every young midfielder dreams of. A few weeks later, on 3rd September, Marino earned his first cap. Spain were locked in a tense 1-1 battle with Germany when he stepped onto the pitch, replacing Sergio Busquets early in the second half. It wasn't just a substitution, it was a passing of responsibility, a signal that Spain trusted him. 3 years later, he delivered again. On 12 September 2023, in a Euro 2024 qualifier in Granada, Marino scored his first international goal, Spain's second in a commanding 6-0 win over Cyprus. A clean strike, full of confidence, from a player who had grown from a promising talent into a dependable international presence. Then came Euro 2024, the tournament that would etch his name into Spanish football history. Marino was selected for the squad, but his defining moment arrived in the quarterfinal against host Germany in Stuttgart, a city with personal history. In the 118th minute, with the score level at 1-1, Dani Olmo whipped in a cross. Marino rose above everyone, met it perfectly, and guided a header into the far corner. Spain 2-1 Germany into the semifinals. His celebration sprinting wildly around the corner flag wasn't random, it was a tribute. In 1991, at that exact stadium, his father had scored for Osasuna in a UEFA Cup game and celebrated the same way. Father and son separated by decades but connected by destiny, both scoring decisive European goals in Stuttgart. Marino went on to feature in the final as Spain defeated England 2-1, securing a historic 4th European championship, the most of any nation in history. And with that triumph, he joined a rare group, becoming one of just 12 players to win both youth and senior European titles, alongside teammates Nacho, Ferran Torres, Alvaro Morata, and Rodri. It was more than a tournament. It was the completion of a footballing circle, from first call-up to first goal, to a hero's header in extra time, to lifting the European Championship trophy. Mikel Merino didn't just play for Spain, he became part of its history. So when Arsenal came calling in August 2024, they weren't signing a wonder kid or a YouTube compilation merchant. They were signing a footballer with scars, medals, and a brain tuned to big moments. A midfielder who had learned survival in Pamplona, structure in Dortmund, pressure in Newcastle, leadership in San Sebastian, and clutch finishing with Spain. Nobody, at that point, thought of him as a center forward, but everything he'd lived through, the late runs, the headers, the duels, the calm and decisive moments, was quietly preparing him for the role he would later inherit in North London. Before Mikel Merino ever pulled on an Arsenal shirt, the story was already building. We just didn't know what it was building towards yet. When Arsenal confirmed the signing of Mikel Merino in August 2024, the reaction across football was quiet. Not negative, not excited, just quiet. The kind of quiet that greets a signing people respect but don't quite understand. He wasn't coming with superstar noise. He wasn't arriving as the solution to any public crisis. He was, in the eyes of many, another smart Arteta signing. A reliable, intelligent midfielder brought in to add depth and maturity to a squad chasing the biggest trophies. £31.6 million, a Spain international, more than 200 La Liga appearances, a Copa del Rey title, a Euros winner, solid, sensible, useful. That was the verdict. But then almost immediately, everything went wrong. On his first training session, Marino collided awkwardly with Gabriel Magalhaes and fractured his shoulder. A brand new signing, one the coaching staff had planned to integrate slowly and smartly, suddenly sidelined for weeks without ever kicking a ball for the club. It was frustrating, but it didn't rattle him. Injuries had shaped parts of his journey. He'd survived worse, learned from worse. What hurt more was the timing. He'd come to Arsenal to contribute straight away, and instead he had to watch. By the time he returned and finally made his debut against Paris Saint-Germain in October, coming off the bench in a Champions League win, his role still felt unclear. He wasn't replacing anyone. He wasn't filling a hole in the system. Arsenal already had Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard, Thomas Partey, Kai Havertz, and Jorginho. Where exactly did Marino fit? What was he supposed to become in this star-studded midfield? At that stage, nobody, not even Arteta, imagined the answer would be a striker. But even in those early months, something subtle started to show. Marino's movement into the box wasn't normal for a midfielder. He didn't drift in, he attacked space. He didn't jog into the penalty area, he timed it, and his first Premier League goal said everything. October 27th, 2024, Liverpool at the Emirates, a tight, physical match. Arsenal searching for a breakthrough. Free kick whipped into the box, and Marino, arriving late but perfectly, met it with a header that bounced just out of Alisson's reach. A classic late run, executed with a striker's instinct. It wasn't just a goal, it was a hint, a small preview of the transformation brewing in the shadows. Behind the scenes, coaches noticed his duels, his aerial presence, his anticipation, the way he seemed to feel where a chance might fall. Arteta loved his intelligence, the way he processed tactical instructions quickly, the way he adapted to multiple roles without complaint. But still, he was a midfielder. Everyone knew that. Everyone accepted that. Until Arsenal ran out of strikers and Mikel Merino became something nobody saw coming. There are transformations in football that feel planned, and then there are the ones that feel like fate. Mikel Merino's shift from midfielder to emergency striker was never part of Mikel Arteta's blueprint. It wasn't drawn on a whiteboard. It wasn't hidden inside some long-term project document. It happened because Arsenal had no choice. February 2025, away at Leicester, Kai Havertz injured, Gabriel Jesus. Arsenal were running out of forwards, running out of options, and running dangerously close to running out of time. So Arteta turned to a player who had barely completed 2 full weeks of training since his shoulder injury, a player who had never led the line professionally, a player whose role was supposed to be simple, knit possession, carry the midfield, add balance. Instead, Marino came on for Raheem Sterling in the 69th minute and walked straight into the chaos of being Arsenal's number 9. What happened next shifted his entire Arsenal career. 2 goals, both decisive, both scored like he'd been preparing for this role his whole life. The first, a near post header, timing so perfect it looked rehearsed. The second, a striker's finish, sharp, instinctive, ruthless. Arsenal won 2-0, and suddenly, the makeshift striker label started feeling too small. From that night, Arteta understood something. This wasn't an accident. Marino saw the penalty area differently. He attacked crosses with purpose. He arrived in dangerous spaces with intelligence that couldn't be taught. And so, quietly, without announcement, without ceremony, the experiment continued. April 8th, 2025. Champions League quarterfinals, Real Madrid at the Emirates, a stage reserved for the elite, a night where mistakes are punished, a night where reputations are forged. Marino, again deployed up front, scored in a 3-0 win that shook Europe, a midfielder just months earlier, now scoring against Real Madrid in the biggest competition in world football. By the end of the 2024-25 season, he'd played as a striker often enough to make it impossible to ignore. He wasn't just filling a gap, he was creating a blueprint for a new kind of forward. But the real explosion came in 2025. September 28th, 2025, St. James's Park. Arsenal losing with 10 minutes left. Marino, just off the bench, rises above Newcastle's defense and buries a header for the equalizer. A goal full of emotion. Scored against his former club, in a stadium that once adored him. A spark, a turning point, a reminder that this wasn't a temporary role. He belonged in these moments. And then, with Gyökeres injured again in November, Arsenal needed him once more. 4 matches, 4 different challenges, one player stepping into the spotlight every single time. Against Sunderland, he held the line, created space, fought for every second ball. Against Tottenham, he bullied defenders, dragged center backs out of position, kept Arsenal threatening. Against Bayern Munich, he was fearless, pressing their backline, disrupting their rhythm. Against Chelsea, he delivered again on the biggest stage, but nothing defined his game more than what he produced at Brentford. December 3rd, 2025, Arsenal versus Brentford, top of the table on the line, pressure everywhere. Marino didn't blink. 11th minute, he attacked Ben White's cross like a seasoned number 9, head down, timing perfect, finish clinical. His 6th headed goal of 2025, the most in the Premier League that calendar year, and he wasn't done. Late in the match, as Brentford pushed for an equalizer, Marino dropped deep, pushed the ball up front, slid a perfectly weighted pass into Bukayo Saka. 2-0. Game over. A goal, an assist, a performance full of authority, the kind you expect from a star striker, not a midfielder playing out of position. By the time the whistle blew, the numbers were undeniable. 11 goals, 2 assists in all competitions, 9 Premier League goals in 2025, more than any Arsenal player. He didn't become Arsenal's emergency striker, he became Arsenal's solution, a footballer who arrived to strengthen the midfield, now carrying the attack through one of the most demanding stretches of the season. This wasn't improvisation anymore. This was evolution. This was Marino discovering a part of his game that had been waiting to surface for years. Arsenal realized they weren't just borrowing a midfielder for a new role. They'd found a forward. They'd found a match winner. They'd found a player who could save them when everything else was falling apart. Mikel Merino didn't set out to become Arsenal's unexpected hero. He simply stepped into the moments where the team needed someone brave enough to carry the weight. A midfielder by trade, a striker by necessity, a leader by nature. Every header, every run, every instinctive finish reminded Arsenal of one truth. When everything felt uncertain, Marino was steady. And as the season pushed forward, one thing became clear. This wasn't a temporary fix. It was a revelation. The kind that changes a team, the kind that changes a season, the kind that changes a player forever. Arsenal signed Mikel Merino to strengthen their midfield. Instead, he became their emergency striker, their late-game weapon, their problem solver, the man who scores when it matters most. This is the story of a £30 million midfielder who redefined himself in front of our eyes, who went from depth signing to match winner, who proved that his adaptability, intelligence, and timing mattered just as much as talent.